Hello and welcome to Films for the Very First Time. My name is Jordan. With me, as always, is Casey McGeorge.
Oh, how's it going, everybody?
It's going good. We are about to wrap up season 2 in the coming weeks here of Films for the Very First Time. We have, I think, after this, Casey's wild card pick, and then my last pick, I think, is what we got left. So we've got some good stuff ahead of you here, and this week, if you don't know what this show is, and this is the first time you're listening, each week or every other week, one of us picks a film on rotating, film or movie that the other one has not seen, and have a discussion about the film, and then give our own ratings for it. And then the next person will pick the next film or TV show before the end of the show, so everybody knows what to watch for the next episode. And I picked 1997's L.A. Confidential. This movie has a stacked cast that includes Kevin Spacey, Russell Crowe, Guy Pearce, James Cromwell, Kim Basinger, Danny DeVito, uh, and just it goes on and on. There's actually even like Simon Baker pre The Mentalist days makes an appearance in this. Like I didn't even watch The Mentalist, but I know of it, and I was like, oh my god, I think that's the guy from The Mentalist. Like 10 years before that show even premiered. So, um, but it is based off of a book, actually, as well, called L.A. Confidential, written by James Elroy. This movie was directed by Curtis Hanson. The screenplay was written by Brian Helgeland and Curtis Hanson. And it premiered September 19th, 1997, in the United States and made $126.2 million on a $35 million budget film.
That that budget is a lot less than I would have thought,
Just for the
or I
cast,
can
right?
or I can see now. Nowadays, that budget's definitely going to be a little bit higher. Yeah, especially a stacked cast like that. Even if you put maybe not the same people, but their contemporaries or something. Yeah, that $30 million for a budget like that is pretty inexpensive considering.
Yeah, like what is the inflation on that? I'll be curious. Let me see if I can get that, because um that is a much lower budget than I would have thought. So if I go ahead and enter in like 35 million in 1997, we'll put 96 because that's probably when it was filmed and stuff, right? So
Yeah,
and we'll go to
I'd say
March
that'd probably be
2025.
about 75 or 80.
About 71 million. That's still a very low budget when it comes to films today, right? So like that's not bad at all.
But in all fairness, too, there's not a lot of special effects in the movie either.
Yeah, I would think,
Uh,
they have some really great like sets and stuff, and it is mostly a detective story where you're not doing a lot of, you know, and sometimes, like, I don't know if it's the case for this movie. Some of these actors were not as big at this point, but like Guy Pearce, I don't think was a huge name at this point.
I don't think Russell Crowe was a huge name at the time either because
When was Gladiator?
I
A
remember
couple years later.
Gladiator didn't come out till the 2000s, I
Oh,
don't
was
think.
it? This is 97. So Gladiator was 2000. So this is 3 years before.
I, re- I, I
Yeah.
didn't know it at the time, but I remember Russell Crowe, or I later remembered Russell Crowe from a movie he did with Denzel Washington called Virtuosity
Mm.
that came out a couple years before this. That was about somehow like the FBI or CIA got
Oh, 95. Yeah.
upload
Okay.
uploaded like the brain waves or like the thoughts of all serial killers uh into into somebody or something's mind, and that was Russell Crowe. Russell Crowe was a bad guy in that one.
Mm. Yeah, he started acting more, like in Australia, and then came over here. He was actually in the running, it says, for Jeff Daniels' role in Gettysburg, and got passed over for Jeff Daniels. Um, yeah, so it seems like this was kind of like at the beginning of Russell Crowe's career. So now it's like one of those movies where you look back at it later and say, "What a stacked cast." You know what it kind of reminds me of is like Arrested Development has like a stacked cast if you go back and watch it now. But like back then, like a lot of those people were not as well known as they are now.
I would say the biggest person in this movie might have been Kim Basinger,
Yeah,
the
was
biggest name.
Spacey well known at this point or no? Because even DeVito was like, maybe DeVito was bigger. So I mean, like Spacey was just in Usual Suspects a couple years before this. That's probably his biggest thing right before this.
Yeah,
Oh, he was in Seven
yeah,
as well, right? I mean, he was in Seven as well. So
but yeah, the Spacey and Basinger.
yeah,
I mean, DeVito was a known quantity, but I don't think.
he's not like the box office draw, right? For this,
Yeah, like even, and this is nothing against Danny DeVito, but even with like Twin, the biggest draw in that was obviously on Schwarzenegger.
Schwarzenegger, and just like the
Uh,
hilarity of them being twins, right? Like,
yeah, of technically those two being twin brothers, right? And that fit well. I will say great casting.
yeah.
I can see a Danny DeVito being that like sleazy tabloid guy
Mm-hmm.
from like this time. Like he fit that role really well. Um, and then like when I heard that his voice first pop up, I was like, Danny DeVito's in this. What is?
Yeah, yeah. I forgot he was in this movie. Uh, because I think of like Guy Pearce, Russell Crowe, Kevin Spacey. Like I do not think of Danny DeVito when I think of this movie. But he the when I was adding the stats, this is really our first DeVito film, but I wanted to highlight as well that he was a producer on our very first one, Pulp Fiction.
Yeah, he actually has a lot of background stuff with a lot of different movies, and it's one of those where you find out like, wait a minute, the him or this guy was a producer on this movie. Uh, you find out stuff like that, and you're like, wow. Have you before we really get into the movie, have you what was your interest or world like
Like how'd I get
have you
into it?
really get not into this movie but into like film noir movies in general?
Interesting. Because like I think this one was, if I remember right, I actually don't remember. I think I definitely borrowed this from the library, I think, back in the day. And it may have been during my phase of playing L.A. Noir, the game.
That is a really good and underrated
I
game, man. I
love
really need
it.
to finish
Oh my
that.
god, I want to go back and play it again. I brought it up from. I had to pack away some of my games that I don't play as much because of space for the baby and stuff. And I went down in the basement yesterday and dug it up, and I was like, I'm popping this sucker back in soon.
Especially like that trumpet in the game. That's like the
Yes.
first thing like I immediately jumped to that. But like so I had a little exposure to them. Obviously I'm a little bit older, so like during the '80s and stuff,
Mm,
you could find stuff like The Maltese Falcon or Strangers on a Train or some of these other film noirs on like your Saturday afternoon, um,
like Turner
on like
Classic or
Saturday
whatever.
afternoons. No, not even well
Before
before
that,
Turner Classic, but like yeah, like your random regular. Because remember, we didn't have a ton of channels back in the day, and even you'd find them on. You might find it on like a TNT or TBS, stuff like that. But even you find them on random channels at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon or something. Because remember like back then you'd only get like say for basketball you get like one NBA game of the week Sunday on like NBC. Uh, your TNT or TBS would have a couple games, but like Sunday afternoon you get one. For baseball, Saturday afternoon or Sunday afternoon you get one game of the week, right? Your national game of the week, so it'd be like your Red Sox, Yankees, your Dodgers, Cubs, stuff like that. Like you wouldn't get like Royals, anybody, because I don't think you're really getting the Royals in general. They weren't a very good team at the time. Didn't have a huge national following, right? So either before or after the game, or heaven forbid, the game gets rained out, right? Because we can't control the weather. So
Right.
let's say you've got like a 3 o'clock first pitch, and all of a sudden, hey, game's rained out, and it's not on a it's either on a delay or it's just going to be postponed. They got to come up with something. They throw like the Maltese Falcon or Strangers on a Train or one of these other like old movies on, because it's probably cheaper than anything else they can get, and they might already have the rights or the copyrights expire or something. Blah blah blah.
So I think, uh, and I may have been during this time too. When I was in college, I took a class. I have an interest in like writing and fiction and stuff like that, but I was a history major. Um, and I had a class that was kind of like a mashup of both. It was kind of like a, I don't know if what it was called. I don't think it was history. It may have been history of detective fiction or just detective fiction. And we started at like the earliest of those type of stories with Edgar Allan Poe and like Murders in the Rue Morgue uh, type of stories, and then going into Agatha Christie novels.
Mm-hmm.
So we read like a Poirot story, and I love like I've always had an interest in like those type of Sherlockian stories, because of I grew up watching Monk, grew up watching Psych. I love those type of shows. Um, Murder She Wrote, Matlock, all that kind of stuff, right? And I so in this class we would read those, and then there was a segment we did on like noir stuff. Um, so it may have also been during that I was like, oh, what other like noir stuff that I'm pretty sure it was probably due to L.A. Noir, because the similarities between the game and this are, you know,
Crazy.
yeah. I mean, especially just like when you get to kind of like the hierarchy, the room that they're in when they're giving assignments is exactly the room that you go into in LA Noir and get assignments. Like it looks exactly like that. And uh it has like the same sort of progression system, like at one point Vincennes is on Vice and he gets sent back down to Homicide. Like it's like this uh the music, everything about it is very um you know very similar to it. So I really just, when you're playing, I think LA Noir, and I think I was looking up for more stuff like that, and people keep saying LA Confidential. And like I said at the time, I was a fan of Kevin Spacey, not so much now with his his stuff going on. But it was one of the reasons I probably checked it out as well after House of Cards and all
So
that.
so one, I never really got into noir stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
As a kid, I just thought it was old movies, and I was one of those when I was 8, 9, 10 years old in the '80s, right? Turned 10 years old in 1988. So at the time, stuff like this would have been on TV, like I said, during those times. I'm just like, why do I want to watch an old movie?
Right.
Like, I don't want to see something from the 1950s. Like, no, we have modern stuff. But now, as I get older and I understand storytelling more, and I understand the stories more and everything, I really am interested more in like, and I haven't watched, but I want to see. I think it's something that's stuck in like my Amazon queue, or it's in my Amazon basket, and I'm just waiting on a sale on to get like the Maltese Falcon, to get like Strangers on a Train. So if I can find like a really good sale on them, I want to pick those up. But movies like that, especially once you understand movie making a little bit more, and you're like, oh, like these are really great. stories. These are really great movies, and these are kind of integral to the history of Hollywood and filmmaking and stuff. Um, two, I'm looking up something right now, and it looks like it doesn't. I'd have to look up more, but it does look like the this is from Venture Beat from 2011, and it says L.A. Noir's debt to L.A. Confidential, and it's just a quick little article, and it goes through a couple of things, and it shows some side by sides between a couple of
Mm-hmm.
people and a couple of scenes, and you're like, okay, yeah, they definitely. Um, I would dare say they might have been inspired
Yeah, well, and
by
that's the thing
L.A. Confidential.
too. Like they may have been inspired by L.A. Confidential, or they're inspired by like, or maybe L.A. Confidential is so accurate with how they portray some of this stuff that it is like, you know, of course you're gonna have similarities, right? Like there is. I don't know the answer to that, but um, that's the kind of stuff that I really dug about
And
the look of it.
and finally, I think we've talked about it before. Uh, Two things. One, with Kevin Spacey, this is a prime example of loving the art but
Yeah.
hating the artist. Like he really was a great actor. I've seen a couple other movies he did. American Beauty was great. One of my favorite movies is The Usual Suspects.
Yes.
I hadn't seen this one obviously until now. Um, Once again, he did a great job in this movie.
And horrible bosses, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
you know what? I
exactly.
forgot about that a
There's
couple
a
weeks ago.
link.
Horrible Bosses. Um, Also, uh, this is not the first time we've had something where there's been a plot or a storyline or something that's eerily similar to something that has happened with a person or the actor. Happened with Danny Masterson in Face Off, where he was preying upon John
Yeah.
Travolta's daughter there, and then we're like, oh, he just recently went to prison for rape, and then with one of the storylines in here, and you're like, dude, this is like obviously it's just a weird coincidence because you can't really
Right, right.
control what's going to happen like 20, 30 years down the road or how something's going to come out. But you're like, as I was watching this, I was like, oof, this is. And then what was it the Jeffrey Jones thing I told you about you didn't know about with Ferris Bueller? Where I was
Yeah,
like, man,
yeah.
this is a little weird of like him, especially with what came out later with him and his kind of infatuation with Ferris. You're like, what are you talking about? It's like, oh, you don't know.
Yeah, I guess let's dive in to the story of L.A. Confidential. So this takes place, the movie does, in 1953.
I was gonna say I don't remember. Does it give a year? I forget. Like
I think they allude to it at some point because they mentioned like the 50s and because I would have thought 40s, but I think they mentioned the 50s at some point. And I think when they're talking about getting somebody out of prison at like in the 60s or at 1960, it would be like 7 years from now. Like, I don't know. I think there was some stuff that led to it, but um,
I know there
officially
was one time
1953.
with one of the guys' brothers. They were like he wouldn't get out till like 78,
Right, right.
1978. And then they were talking about we can cut 10 years off. He can come out in 1968 or something. But that was the only thing I remember about that. Like I don't. A lot of times with movies like this, you might see like a title card that just says
Right,
like
right.
L.A. 1952 or whatever the case is, and I watched this like 12 hours ago, but I couldn't remember if they gave a date on the.
They don't, and I think it's interesting. I don't think they did, but with it being 1953, the bloody Christmas scandal that they have at the beginning of this movie actually took place in 1951 and is fictionalized in the book as well, L.A. Confidential book, which spans 8 years. It says it goes from like 1950 to 1958, I think, in the book. So um, I guess they're streamlining it. They said it to all be done in like this year of 1953. Um, could be a little bit after that too, right? Because like the Christmas stuff happens, and you would think there's only a week left, so it could be like into 1954 at some point as well. But Um, yeah, so 1953, the LA Police Department is, trying to wash the sins of their past, I guess you could say. And we're introduced to three different officers, one being Guy Pearce's Edmund Exley, whose father was also a detective and was murdered and never caught. We have Jack Vincennes, who's played by Kevin Spacey, and he usually teams up with the tabloid journalist Sid Hutchins, played by Danny DeVito. Um, and then we have Bud or Wendell White, who is very anti woman abuser. And no, that sounded wrong. He's anti abusing women. Okay. It may sound like he was a woman abuser, but he's anti abusing women because his father had murdered his mother. So those are our three officers. They all have very different ways of handling situations. You have Exley, who's a little bit more by the book, uh, straight arrow, right? Does not want to do anything illegally. So much so that when he's asking his, or he's telling his captain, right, that he wants to become a detective like his father, and he gives him the questions of like, would you plant evidence, would you do this, right? uh
Yeah. Could you shoot a guy in the back?
yeah, and he says no to them. He's like, well, the other people that are answered yes to those questions. Just showing the corruption that's already in the police department at this time.
Quick side note before we move any further. So obviously the LAPD has a history of corruption. I think a lot of police departments have a huge history of corruption. The LAPD specifically. Through a lot of other podcasts and stuff, I found out and listened to, found out recently, the LAPD also has a history of during this time they would go to the deep south and recruit officers and people to come out to work for the LAPD down there. So that they also ended up with a lot of KKK members, a lot of bigoted and racist members, and they specifically recruited those members to come out to work for the LAPD because of the Great Migration, and as all of these black families and stuff moved out of the South and moved to other places. One of the places they wanted to come to was California and Los Angeles. And a lot of people out here in California and Los Angeles were like, oh, no, 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 we can't have that. So you still have, because of that, you still have a lot of enclaves of certain neighborhoods that are more black or Mexican or Hispanic than other areas, like, in certain areas in this area, including some of the areas that were recently hit hard by the fires we had in January out in this area. But yeah, there's definitely been a ton of corruption and a ton of horrible things that the LAPD has done for years. Unfortunately, some of it is still ongoing.
Yeah, I mean, right, power corrupts, right? That's the golden rule, I feel like. Really, it is tough in that, you give people the power to do stuff like this, or like we see in this movie, even of having that power to plant evidence, like they say, right? And it means you can get away with stuff because you're kind of the one in control of the narrative and in control of what actually gets out there due to what you're planting and stuff. And this is before, like, especially back then, it was probably way easier because this is really before like DNA sequencing and all that kind of stuff, where there was definitely easier ways to get away with it as a cop, I feel like, than nowadays, where evidence is a lot of like forensic stuff.
Well, yeah, okay. It's funny you speak of forensics. Like, I'm not sure when forensics, the phrase forensic would have came into the mainstream. I think this is kind of early for the term forensics, but I could be wrong. Like the 50s,
No,
I
yeah, I
don't
think
know
you're
if.
right. I don't think forensics really became a thing until like the 80s.
And I'm not even sure of But I know they kept using forensics in this movie, and I was like, this seems a little early for them to be using the term forensics. Like, not to take anything away from police investigators and stuff, but I'm like, I thought most of their forensics was just like, oh, he his fingerprints are on the gun. Uh, he was pointing this way. He died and fell this way. Like I like, oh, here's a bullet casing. Like I can't imagine there was a ton of other. Maybe I'm wrong, but I can't imagine they were doing stuff like pulling fibers off of dead bodies and things. Like
No, yeah. So it seems like
little body hairs.
forensics as a whole, forensic science was a formalized field in 1910 in France, and then it became in L.A. in 1923. So,
Wow. Okay, so I was horribly wrong.
but
That
I think
it
you're
just
right in the
seems really
sense
early
of,
for
I
like.
think you're right when it comes to like fibers and DNA and anything like that. You're getting that more later because we hear about some of these unsolved cases in the past that could have been solved if only DNA, testing was
Well,
around back then and stuff.
I mean, for a long time they didn't even use DNA; they used blood typing. So it was just
Mm-hmm.
like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, this person has like O positive blood or stuff like that. So it wasn't until like the 80s I think the like actual DNA testing um came into the norm. And tying back to one of our last things, it wasn't until the OJ Simpson trial, once again out here in LA, where a lot of people even really heard of uh DNA testing and stuff like that. And the average person honestly didn't have a huge knowledge of what it actually entailed and what it was. Um, and it wasn't until after that trial, and then we got shows like CSI and a few other things where now stuff like CSI has actually kind of ruined. It's called the CSI effect. It's kind of ruined some of that stuff because people go into a jury that they might be on and they're anticipating like, oh, there should be DNA evidence, or if stuff like that, and if there's not, or it doesn't make enough sense to them, they're really easy to say not guilty, as compared to just the opposite of before, where you just kind of had to rely on eyewitness testimony or the word of your noble policeman, and that was good enough for someone to be guilty. So it's kind of swung somewhat in the other direction a little bit, but
And so we have those three characters. What was your thoughts at being introduced to these characters, and was there anyone that you were particularly, I guess, rooting for more, or somebody you didn't like? Who's the Mateo or Manny of this cast so far?
I wouldn't say I had a Mateo or Manny feeling of either of them. I had a bit of each of them that I'd liked, or I kind of was behind, and a bit of each of them that I definitely wasn't. Um, Spacey's character just seemed really sleazy, like he was just in it for the Hollywood connections and the glitz and glamour. He's a technical advisor on a what was it, Hard Target or Hard Boil, whatever that cop show.
Yeah, it's like
Um,
a. I think it's supposed to be based off Dragnet, is what I was
yeah,
reading.
Dragnet
Yeah,
type
so it's
show.
a very Dragnet esque.
Um, so there's that. I can. This is gonna sound horrible. I was with Guy Pierce's character, but I can also understand his captain of saying like, "Hey, you're not willing to do these things. Maybe you're not meant to be a detective,
Mm-hmm.
right?" Unfortunately, uh, policing in those days was just a lot different. Um, I was with Guy Pierce's character, like,
Right, right, right.
obviously, let's do the right things and let's do things by the book. But when his captain's telling him like, if you're not willing to do these things, like, I don't know. Once again, this is gonna sound horrible. I was kind of with Russell Crowe's character, uh, of not being, of him being against spousal abuse
Hmm.
and everything, and how he felt about that. Um, so I didn't have a lot of sympathy for like the guy he kind of beat up and handcuffed to the railing on like Christmas Eve or whatever that was,
Oh
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because like the guy just got out of jail and he's beating up on his spouse or
Yeah.
whatever, right? Horrible, horrible. Um, so I have a little less sympathy for him because he did that. I have a little less sympathy for him when Russell Crowe told him, like, okay, fine, like if it happens again, I'll make sure to tell your parole officer. I'll make sure you get violated. I'll tell your parole officer that you were raping kids. You know what they do to people who rape kids in prison. Once again, not the right thing to do. Not I shouldn't kind of be rooting for him in that aspect, but
I
you're
think
kind of like,
I think you are presented to
he's not that
be.
bad. Like
Yeah, I think that's how we're supposed to feel about Bud. Honestly, I
he's
do.
got noble intentions, so I can't really complain about it. It's one of those like,
Right. It's almost like a vigilante type thing of like he's doing
could be
stuff that
worse.
he,
So
shouldn't be doing, but he's taking out people that need to be, dealt with, right? Like it's kind of how we it's almost like his own honor code for him like while he's
yeah,
bending the rules and like even staging crime scenes, you're like, well, those people deserved it, right? like, um
some of the people, some of them, not all.
and he
Some of
does, near the end, turn around and do what's right as well. So I think that helps us as well. But I think we are supposed to be kind of dealing with the conflict of seeing like corrupt cops that we are rooting for, as well as like a straight laced cop that we are rooting for as well. So, and then like I feel like a lot of the vibe is when these three are kind of against each other. We're supposed to be kind of like, no, like team up. There's got to be something else going on here, and thankfully they eventually do. But also on Christmas Eve we have Bud right after he had beat up the guy you were mentioning. He encounters Lynn Bracken and Susan Leffords, and a former officer Leland Meeks, who he's not too familiar with, but his buddy Stensland is knows Meeks and mentions how he's a former cop. Um,
them. We'll find out more about that later.
Yeah, they all work for Pierce Patchett, who is a millionaire um, who operates this ring called Fleur de Lis, which is like a prostitution ring that has women that are surgically altered to resemble film stars. Kind of a effed up scenario there. And I would say this is something that is kind of very still relevant to take because like plastic surgeries and gotten only gotten even more and more like advanced and popular where people are getting this done and uh so I think this is another subject that kind of aged well in that regard.
Can we talk about how much of a smoke show Kim Basinger is?
Go ahead.
Especially in the '90s. I completely forgot how attractive that woman really was. My first experience, my first exposure to her was Batman '89.
Yes, Vicky
It
Vale.
was Vicky Vale. Yes. That was actually like her breakout role too. Um, and she won an Academy Award for this movie, which I'm not sure who she was up against. I have some thoughts on because I'm not sure. I'm not really sure of like, does that really need like an account? Is this an Academy Award winning role? I don't know. I could see either Guy Pearce or like Russell Crowe or Kevin
Oh,
Spacey winning another one, but two of them already. Crowe got one later. Spacey got one earlier
mm-hmm.
for The Usual Suspects. He gets another one later for American Beauty. I could kind of see Guy Pearce getting one. I don't know if he's ever been nominated for anything. Um, but and then I went down a deep rabbit hole with Kim Basinger last night of like I didn't know she was a model previously. She was a Bond girl.
Yeah, that was her real breakout
Um,
role. It says here, "Never
she
Say Never Again."
she appeared in the pages of Playboy. Um, she won an Academy Award for this one. She's actually agoraphobic, which means she doesn't like going outside or being around a lot of people.
Huh.
So she's had to deal with that. I kind of remember she had this whole thing where she bought a town like in Georgia where she lives, and that kind of went up in smoke because it turned out badly, and she had to sell it off. And I think there was some bankruptcy proceedings or something. I don't know, but like, and then there was her marriage to Alec Baldwin that when it had some ups and downs and everything. Um, but yeah, she was very attractive, and I was just like, wow, I forgot about Kim Basinger.
Yeah. She does a great role in this pivotal role too, really, for this movie. Because she gets introduced here, and we see not really her as much in the case of who Bud is worried about, right? He's worried about Susan Lefferts because of her nose being bandaged up, but I think that is more revealed to be due to the surgery. Um, because her like when she does end up dead, her mom has a hard time IDing the body until they get to that birthmark on her hip, because she had been, as they call it, cut to look like a film star. But during this time, Bud begins a relationship with Kim Basinger's Lynn Bracken character, um, and also on this Christmas we have the Bloody Christmas scandal, which is where they've caught these these men who were supposedly um, to blame of something that had happened to other officers, and they are of Mexican descent, and they just beat the crap out of them, and it becomes a scandal. The journalists are there, and they go down there and just see them like wailing on them, get pictures, put it in the paper, and it's this huge issue that's going to kind of change the course of the whole movie. I would say it's probably like the point where everything really kicks off here, because then we have Exley, who is, like I said, straight laced by the book, and he wants to he's willing to testify against his fellow officers, which is a big no-no, right? Like his captain is like really like, kid, don't do this type of thing. Um, the people above the captain are very like, hell yeah, like let's get this guy testifying. We'll bury this, you know, and Exley comes up with a way to save the reputation by prosecuting pensioned officers and then only giving up one officer who's not pensioned, really, and that would be um, White's partner, Stensland, right? Who they say is a year away from his pension at this point, so he just misses the cut.
Okay, real quick. So that year, 1998 Academy Awards. Actress in a supporting role, Kim Basinger
Yes.
for L.A. Confidential, she won. Joan Cusack for In and Out, which good movie. I didn't see that one coming, but Minnie Driver for Good Will Hunting, Gloria Stewart for Titanic, and honestly, I might have given it to Julianne Moore for Boogie Nights.
Hmm.
Have you ever seen Boogie
I
Nights?
have not.
And I forgot Boogie Nights came out in 1997. Jesus Christ! Like that, I didn't realize the movie was that old. But like,
And that Oscar that Kim Basinger won is one of two that this movie wins. It wins Best Screenplay based on material previously produced or published. It was nominated for a few other ones, but those are the only two that it won. Okay, so we have Exley willing to testify. Um, they're trying to get Vincennes to testify, and he
And
ends up. Go ahead.
it just so happens that there happened to be a reporter because it was the night of the Christmas party, right?
Yes.
And so they were there was a reporter there, and he had some pictures early from the Christmas party. He just happens to be leaving at the time when this little riot and this little beating breaks out. I'm kind of curious and wondering as to how they allowed the dude with the camera and the flash going off to leave that police station without beating the crap out of him. Like I'm not advocating for that, right? But like you see they took Exley, they locked him up in a damn closet while this was going on, right?
Hmm.
And he was the watch commander for the night. He was the guy in charge for the night. So he was Sergeant Exley at the time. They took him, locked him up in a closet so they could keep beating the crap out of these guys, right?
Yeah.
How did that journalist and that guy with the big ass camera that probably weighed like 15 pounds and was as massive as it was, how did they allow them to make it out of that police station without that camera being destroyed or those guys being beaten and or intimidated? Like, once again, not advocating for that, but at the
Yeah.
same
No.
time, you gotta think like, well, like you got to tie up all the loose ends. Like that's your biggest loose end there. Like, let's
Yeah. I don't know. I think that was more for like movie convenience because reading the actual.
and seeing that picture splashed across like the
Yeah.
front page of the LA Times. I get it for
Because
movie convenience, but
what I'm reading right now is like the actual attack on the prisoners was out of the news for almost 3 months. Um, the original headline was like officers beaten in a bar brawl, 7 men jailed, and Mexican Americans pushed for a focus on police brutality, and more reports of violence fled in. That the media began to turn against the LAPD, running stories condemning police tactics, and that's when I guess it started getting more seen. So I guess that's why it was fictionalized in the novel, and this is to make it a little bit more convenient
but
of getting the story across. Yeah.
common thread that still kind of happens today and something we dealt with in the last maybe 5 to 10 years. It's not really believed until there's
Proof,
some sort of photo
video.
or video evidence that comes out. Nobody believes it till the Rodney King beating. Nobody believes it till the video of Eric Gardner, and all these other things like you know well, what was his name in 2020? I forget poor guy's name who was killed in Wisconsin. Um,
Yeah.
but nobody believes these things or says it's not happening as much as we think until video proof starts coming out about this. We just had one a couple of not that long ago. Was it Louisiana or maybe Colorado where a bunch of police officers, there was a guy in his yard. He was having an episode and he had a knife in his hand, but like nine of them just like lined up and shot this guy. He I think, passed away last night from his injuries and everything. Um, and it was all caught on video. Now they have body cams, but nobody tends to believe this stuff until video or photo evidence comes out. It's like,
And when
oh,
it
we
does
didn't
come
know.
out, people still try to excuse it, right? uh,
Or people are like, oh, we didn't know it was this bad. No,
yeah,
we've been trying to tell you for years. You just didn't want to listen.
yeah. Uh, so we have um, Stensland fired, and this starts making everybody kind of hostile and angry towards Exley here, since he is one of the ones to have done this. He also gets a promotion, right, to detective lieutenant. He really pushes for it. I think they were just going to give him detective, right, and then he says
Well, he had passed
detective
that's what the
lieutenant.
conversation was about at the beginning of the party. He had passed the lieutenant's exam, um, and his captain was trying to get him to go to like traffic or patrol
Mm-hmm,
or
mm-hmm.
internal affairs or something, and not as a. That's where he had the conversation of like, can you would you be willing to plant evidence on a guy you know is
Right,
guilty?
right.
And he's like, no, I wouldn't. and he's like, maybe you're not cut out to be a detective because those are things that we kind of need to have happen. And he brings it up later in that conversation with like the DA and stuff, where he talks about, you couldn't answer those questions I asked you earlier, but he kind of pushed for it, like, yeah, I'm willing to do this, but
Hmm.
this is what I want in return. So, and with was Kevin Spacey's character, they threatened to take him. They took him off of as the technical advisor for the Hard Target, the police show or whatever, and the only way they'd let him go back was if he testified himself. So, and but that was also from Exley. Exley was the one who brought that up. Like, hey, this is important to him, so take that away from him. He's probably gonna be more willing to do what you ask. So,
And he gets moved from Vice to right to
or from
Homicide.
Homicide to Vice, I think from Homicide to Vice or something instead. One of the two,
Yeah, I think
from one
it's
to the
I think
other.
it's from Vice to
Homicide.
Homicide because he wants to keep finding Mickey Cohen's drugs, and he ends up, they're like, hey, solve one of these cases, you got to make it, break a big case and you can get back up there or whatever. So um so we have the gangster Mickey Cohen is imprisoned, and now Dudley Smith, that's the captain, has to recruit Wendell White, Bud, to fight off the criminals that are trying to take Cohen's place, and a lot of murders targeting Cohen's, people underneath of Cohen, leads to the disappearance of 25 pounds of heroin. That's when we get the massacre at the Night Owl Coffee House, where we then find out that Stensland and Lefferts are among the victims. Uh, and they,
This is right after Stensland had just
yeah,
got fired. So it was like, I think it was later that night, because he had said he told White he had a date that night,
yes,
um, and because he wanted to go out for a drink but he couldn't. He's like, hey, I got a date, so he's gonna catch up with him later in the week. And it was later that night where he was at the Night Owl, and that's where the massacre happened. I think we've talked about this before, but we need more diners back, man.
yeah.
Like a nice little greasy smooth diner, man.
I know we had one right near our house before, and it just closed. Now they have other like diners that the family owns in other areas around us, but they closed the one that was closest, and my wife really liked going there. Um, so they end up arresting 3 African Americans for the crime. That obviously we'll find out that they weren't the ones to really do this, right? They are being pinned for this. Um, because of the big conspiracy at the end here. But we have Exley, who has to go in there and interrogate um, these men, and one of them starts like peeing all over the floor. How scared he was!
Yeah,
That's terrible. Uh, Not great, but they do find out that the men have been having like a woman captive and allegedly raping her. So then that's when Bud goes in to free the woman and execute the person who's sitting in his underwear, eating cereal, watching cartoons. What a way to go out. I don't know. I always put myself in my position of like people that get like killed in like very awkward or like unsuspecting situations here. Like this guy's just like eating his breakfast, watching cartoons, and the next thing you know, you're dead. Like that's not a great way to go out. So then this is when Bud, takes his gun, shoots the door frame, puts it in the guy's hand to make it look like he was retaliating the shot instead of just shooting him point blank. Um, Exley ends up killing the other African Americans in a shootout. He brings like another officer. I don't have his name here, but he goes to look for Vincennes, who's not. there and gets teamed up with this other officer, and it's like this everybody like this tension moment here where everybody's staring at each other, and all it takes is that like bottle to fall and break, right? And
Yeah,
people just start shooting. And unfortunately for that officer, he gets like blasted by 3 or 4 different times.
yeah.
And then, Exley ends up having to kill the rest of them and get out of there. Um, and they end up, he ends up getting a medal, Exley, for this, but Bud and Exley are just continuing to investigate because they just have so many inconsistencies in the case that they notice throughout.
There's something gnawing at him that like is just not sitting right, and they start pulling that string, and once you pull that string, it just starts unraveling everything else.
I love stories like that though, where like it things can be added up a certain way, and like the rest of the characters are like, that's it, that's good, and then like those hard boiled detectives are like, no, there's something wrong with this, and they keep going. Like Monk does this all the time, right? Where like sometimes like they'll have like a killer caught, and then like he'll be like, wait a minute, this isn't adding up, here's the real way that they done it, or like it seems like they're getting away with it, or the Columbo, one more thing type of thing that happens. Just really enjoy that type of stuff. So Bud goes to interview Lefford's mother. Like I said before, she like could not recognize her daughter because of the facial surgery that was done, and had to identify her with the birthmark. She mentions that uh, Lefferts had a boyfriend that was, did she say controlling?
Yeah, so I guess like the boyfriend was mean to her.
Yeah.
Her daughter didn't stick up for her, and then yeah, he's pretty much very controlling, probably abusive.
And he shows a picture
Oh,
of Stensland, and she's like, yep, that's him.
also, we didn't know at the time that it was that the girl had actually just come out of surgery. That's why she had the bruises all over her
Mm-hmm.
face. It looked like she had a broken nose, like she was
Right,
being
right.
beat on. We didn't know it at the time, but it was actually from plastic surgery. We thought it was like she was in a bad situation.
Yeah, that's
You
what Bud
know,
thought too, right? He's checking on her. She's like, it's not what it looks like.
it's
It's
not what
then
it looks.
revealed
But once
that
again,
she's
like
part
you
of
hear
this.
something
Yeah,
like that,
all the
yeah, you're
time. Yeah.
thinking, oh, you're thinking, sure, it's not what it looks like. It, you know, and the the rich guy that's with her is like being real coy, like
Yeah.
blah blah blah. Everything adds up to it being like, hey, uh, somebody's beating the crap out of this poor girl. When in reality, it's she had just came from the plastic surgeon's office, and plastic surgery at that time wasn't great. So like, you know,
Yeah.
you probably weren't healing up in a nice room in a hospital. You had to go back to your own place, and your face was swollen and purple for days, and until
Probably
everything
also just
healed up.
with it being like Fleur de Lis that's doing it, like it's this undercover, you know, prostitution ring. You're probably not getting the best care anyway because they're just trying to like
I don't know.
get you out
Well,
of there.
I don't know. He seemed like he
He does
probably
have
would
money,
have
right?
given
Like,
them. Yeah, he seemed like he probably would have at least put them up in a decent. Like, I don't think he was sending her home, right,
right,
to
right,
live
right.
with her mom in that house. He probably did have a nice place for them because he's making money off of these girls. So the better care he takes care of them in that aspect, you know, the better work he can get out of them later. I guess.
And White ends up going underneath of the house in the cellar to investigate the smell that is outside here, and her mom keeps saying it's just like a mouse or something.
It's a rat.
Rat.
It's a rat.
Oh yeah, it's a rat, all right. It's Meeks. They find out it is the officer Leland Meeks underneath of there. Um, under the house here. Uh, he then goes and finds Mickey Cohen's ex bodyguard, Johnny Stompanato, uh, who tells him that Meeks was the one trying to sell the stolen heroin. So, um,
What? There's some ball grabbing in there too. Like, I get it. Sometimes you have to do what you have to do. I guess if you're gonna intimidate, that's a good way to intimidate a guy. Like, grab his balls and cause him some pain. Like, you gotta be pretty comfortable with yourself to do that. Not gonna lie.
yeah,
Not really sure if that's something.
that's not something I can do. No.
It's not something I'm willing to do. Like, it might take a lot for that. Like, I'm not saying I'm against it. Like, if my life's on the line, or if it's like I have to get out of a place. But if I'm gonna do it just like at a diner under the table just to cause him pain, just to get some more information out of a guy, that might be a line I'm not willing to cross. But
Right.
that's just me.
Yeah. Um, so during this as well, um, we have Danny DeVito's character Sid and Vincennes, who is trying to put together this love affair between Matt Reynolds. This is the character played by Simon Baker, um, and the district attorney Ellis Lowe. And they're trying to get blackmail photos here.
Because Low is on the down low,
Yeah.
gay or at least
Yes.
bisexual, and obviously during that time that could not be something that was out in public. So
Right. So you try to get some blackmail on them, get your way, right? And
now you've got the DA in your pocket, so
Reynolds is found murdered. So this is when Vincennes is going to kind of join forces with,
with his throat slit.
yeah, with Exley on the rest of this investigation here. So they find out that Meeks and Stensland had formerly worked with the captain, Dudley Smith, and had previously dropped an investigation into Patchett and Hudgens blackmailing businessmen with photos of their affairs. Um, and during this too, he has this great conversation with Ed about Ed's father, and we kind of get the term of the Rolo Tomasi, right? Ed has given a name to the person that killed his father and that got away, and he kind of uses it for anybody that gets away, um, and gets away with it. And this conversation is really pertinent here because this is what's going to put Exley onto the captain. Because when Vincennes goes to visit uh, the captain, um, the captain turns out to be dirty and shoots him. And the last thing he
Did
says is Rolo Tomasi.
did not see that coming.
I was going to ask because I remember being shocked the first time, but I know sometimes this stuff can catch people, especially when they says like, "Oh, do they know you're here?" Right? Like the captain asked that to him. He's like, "No, I'm the only one that knows this right now." He's like, "Bam."
Oh, yeah, it was like he asked what did Exley think of what he was putting together, and that's when he's like, "Oh, I haven't told him yet," and then he just turned around and shot him. Honestly, especially like Kevin Spacey, like, and at this point we're like an hour and a half or something into the movie. We're fairly far along into
Yeah,
the
yeah,
movie,
we're getting there.
so it's not like we're 10 minutes into the movie and Kevin Spacey gets killed. But Kevin Spacey is still like one of the bigger
Yeah.
names in the movie, and I was just like, "Whoa, dude, that happened from out of nowhere. Did not see that coming."
Yeah, so do you have any suspicions about the captain being dirty at all or uh
I mean, we,
in
we
on
we
this?
obviously knew he was dirty from earlier when he's asking like, "Can you plant
Yeah, but
evidence?
I mean
Can you
like
shoot a guy in the
over
back?"
top of all of this conspiracy that's going on.
I didn't necessarily see him being this dirty. Of where we find out he's actually trying to take over this Mickey Cohen's whole territory and his turf. That's why there's this big push to get all those other gangsters out and send them back to where they came from because he wants to take over that, which is, excuse me, kind of based off of stuff that did happen in L.A. during these time periods where the police were actually tied in with organized crime,
Right.
or in some cases still their own organized crime unit. There's a lot of issues now with the LAPD or the LA Sheriff's Department and gang tattoos and kind of making their own gangs and various things out here that's been happening over the last 5 years or so. Um, it's still ongoing. Imagine that. Uh,
I love this reveal then when the captain goes um to talk to Ed and says,
he gave me
you know,
this
like,
name.
yeah, he gave me this name, Rollo Tomasi, and kind of like the way that like it is like such a tight shot on Guy Pearce's face at that point. It is, I think, really well shot, and he's like, "Oh, like
You know what it
I'm
reminds
suspicious now."
you, you know what it reminds me of? What was the first Spider-Man movie with Tom Holland?
Oh yeah, Homecoming, right? Oh, when he with Vulture, and like when he finds out it's his date's father, or
No, not that. Kind of that, but more when they're in the car and Michael Keaton's questioning him,
oh yeah,
and that's one of the best movies because you've got the glow of the traffic light,
mm-hmm.
and on Michael Keaton's face, and he's talking to him, and when he puts like, so Tom Holland obviously already
Yeah,
knows, right, that this guy, like, his date's father is the Vulture. And he's nervous back there and he's trying not to let it, he's just trying to be as cool as possible. And then his date lets it slip that he's never around, or he wasn't around during this whole thing in DC.
yeah,
And that's when Michael Keaton's dad puts together, like,
mm-hmm.
oh, he's Spider-Man. And then you have that reflection of
The
like
green
the
light.
perfectly time of the traffic light going from like red to green. And like it was one of those things. It gave me really similar vibes to that, where once Guy Pierce actually picks that up just from that name, and that's when he realizes, oh, this is so much bigger than I thought.
Yeah, because the captain has no idea what that means, and he uh is trying to figure out what it means to kind of cover any last bit of
He
tracks.
doesn't know. He just told on himself.
Yes. And then you have Exley, who's like, obviously, Vincennes wouldn't just have gone to him and be like, Rollo Tomasi, because he knows that that's not a real person. So it puts it
Yeah,
enough
because
where he's like, this is enough to kind of tell me everything I need to know.
they had that moment where he went to him and they finally decided to work together.
Yeah.
Where he's like, "Well, why did you become a cop?" And he told him, blah blah blah. After my dad died, so on and so forth, or my dad was killed, they never found him. So I gave him that fake name. And when he asked, Kevin Spacey character, he's like, "Why did you become a cop?" And he's like, "Honestly, I don't know." So they kind of buried the hatchet a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
where they agreed to work with each other, and then through some other things with the coroner and this and that, they realized, oh, these two cases that we were working on, we thought were just two separate cases, are actually tied together,
Yes.
and there's so much more. But yeah, like I said, the captain doesn't realize he just told on himself, and that's when Exley realizes, oh, you're the one who killed Spacey's character there, because like obviously there's no like there's no reason that would have came out otherwise, right?
Yeah. So
So
we don't think this is intentional from uh Spacey, right? Like he's not trying to pass this along, but I think he's just having the
I
realization
don't
that
know.
Rollo
I think it
Tomasi
might be.
is him.
I think I think it might be. I
It
think
could
it
be
might be
both.
one of those situations where, I mean, obviously he knew he was going to die. Like he had already been shot in the chest. Like he's gonna die. Like he's literally on borrowed time. Like
Right.
time's ticking away. So,
Famous last words.
and he felt bad about everything that else had been happening. I don't know if he was necessarily trying to turn over a new leaf, but he even admitted he was trying to right a wrong that he had done,
Mm-hmm.
because he feels responsible for that young man being killed in that hotel room.
Yeah.
Um, so maybe he was trying to turn over a new leaf. Who knows, right? Um, I think maybe because I think he knew at some point, like I said, he's gonna die in that very moment. Like that's it for him. I think if he does say something or come out, like that captain's gonna try and get to the end of that because obviously he's trying to patch all this back together so like he can
Right.
plug up any holes and get rid of any loose ends or whatever. So I think Spacey's character did know like, hey, if I can get this name out there, that's gonna like this might help actually somehow in this situation down the road. Now, does he know like the very next day at his briefing, the captain's gonna say that
Right.
name to him? Probably not. But I think he does believe like the captain will put that name out at
In the
some point,
report or something, or and then
or
he
in the
finds it.
briefing, right?
Yeah.
Hey, we're looking for a suspect. He was last we knew he was interviewing a suspect named whatever the name was, right? And so there's all points bolted out for this suspect, and that might be enough for Exley to be like, oh, really? So I think that was intentional on his part to try and um, go
Pass
out in the
along a
best way
message.
possible. Yeah, help out.
So during this as well, then we have um, I forget exactly where this took place, but at some point here, Exley ends up sleeping with Lynn, right? And we have DeVito's character taking the blackmail photos of that.
I think something you forgot to mention was that when White went over to Lynn's house or went over to interrogate Lynn earlier in the movie, he kind of fell for her a little bit, right?
Yeah.
But then he started having this obsession with her, and eventually they start seeing each other, not necessarily as like a sex worker client type thing. Like they actually start dating each other
Right.
or seeing each other, personally. So White has this. I don't want to say infatuation, but he has a relationship now with Lynn, and he has. I think he's caught feelings for Lynn.
Mm-hmm.
So
So they kind of set this up so that way Lynn and Exley end up having sex. Sid Hutchins is taking photos and will, present them um, to Bud, who then it gets
I
them
gotta
to fight against each other instead of coming together.
I gotta admit though, like you kind of for me that's a tough sell of like, oh, like because Lynn didn't make a move on Exley. Like she did get kind of close to him a couple times in his personal space, and they kind of talked about her work and everything. But like you're kind of hoping that like maybe he's gonna try and have sex with her, but
You could
like
even just hope that something looks bad enough that you when you take the photo, and then it was given the gold
compromising
mine.
maybe. I
Yeah.
don't know, but like you're kind of hoping for a lot here. Like now, granted, it all works out for them, but at the same time, I was like, and once again, I guess this can go back to my earlier comment of Kim Basinger is a smoke show, and maybe just her raw sexual chemistry and attraction was just enough that Exley couldn't control himself. Like I don't know. Once again, Kim Basinger is a very beautiful woman, but I was just like, really, like that's like kind of jumping there, like because to me it didn't seem like she was leading him on in any way for it.
Well,
Like so
I'm
that's why I was just
wondering.
like,
Yeah, I'm wondering if she was a little bit complicit, like kind of blackmailed into doing this as well. So,
oh no, I think she was.
right,
I
right.
don't doubt that because right before he goes to Lynn, actually went to go talk to what's the guy's name?
Bud.
Um, no, the rich guy.
Oh yeah, Patchett.
He went to go talk to Patchett, and then I think Patchett knew that's where he was going next. So
Yeah.
we see when he leaves, he picks up the phone and he's so either he called the captain or he called
So I
Lynn,
what I'm
or both.
thinking, right, is that if let's say, like you said, it looked more like maybe Exley makes the move, but I would think maybe if he doesn't, like Lynn makes the move, right? So I think it's set up
Jumps on him.
enough
I don't
to
know.
make it work. I think in that case, but
Yeah,
just got
I'll give it that. But like I said, it was just one of those where it was like like he kind of just really just like took advantage of her and just like, like I didn't see any chemistry or attraction there
Right, right.
initially, right? So that's why I was like, where did this just came from out of nowhere? Like,
So they end up fighting White and Exley until they realize, right, that the captain is kind of behind this, and they figure out that Stensland had killed Meeks for the heroin, and that the Captain Smith has orchestrated the Night Owl massacre to then end up killing Stensland and framing
because
the
he's
African
also got
Americans.
rid of like all of Stensland's or Meeks's arrest records,
Yeah,
and like his daily logs just show like he showed up for work and that's it,
it's like
and the one
cleanup. You
signing
know,
off
they
on that,
are
yeah.
just cleaning it up to get rid of any sort of evidence about this.
And this is also where we lose. Well, this is where we find out the Danny DeVito
Mm-hmm.
was working with the captain, and then he got double crossed. Which, in all fairness, he had to know once he got tied up to that chair. Like
I
he's probably not
forgot.
leaving that chair.
I forgot this twist here that DeVito was in on it, and like once Bud runs out there to go like confront them, and you know, uh, he's like, "All right, great, get me out of here," and then they just, I'm like, "Oh shit!" Like, yeah, he's part of it, and then they just kill him, and I'm like, "Oh,
Like you know what that captain's capable of. So
yes."
by allowing yourself to get tied up and handcuffed to that chair, like
And you're just another loose
I'm
end. You're taken out,
I'm
right?
not trying to victim blame here,
No, no.
right? But I kind of am because it's like, you know what this guy's capable of doing, and you're gonna allow that to happen. It's kind of on you a little bit. Like you've got to bear some of that responsibility because I can't imagine you like you've got to go into that knowing there's like there's a 90% chance I'm gonna walk away from this. Like no, you knew what you were walking into, and come on, like really. So like yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I'm victim blaming here. Like this
uh,
one, come on, dude.
we get
You allowed that to happen.
Exley and White. They interrogate Lowe, and they find out that Dudley and Patchett are trying to take over Mickey Cohen's empire, and they end up using the photos that they took of Lowe with Reynolds and get his cooperation, and they end up finding uh they end up finding Sid and Patchett murdered. So really, this is all a play for White to be, I guess, on top. Not White, sorry,
But,
Smith to be on top here.
but Patchett's murder was made to look like a suicide, and he had a
Yes,
suicide note and everything. And in his suicide note, I think he took blame for one of the murders or something like that. I think he took blame for Sid's murder or something. I don't like I can't remember, but like it was meant to look as a suicide, but like it didn't even take him long for it to be like, oh, his fingers were broken.
right.
Like he didn't cut his own wrist because his fingers were broken.
He
Oh
didn't.
look, it
He
looks like he's
well,
been drugged.
yeah. The
That
captain
that took
didn't.
like 30 seconds of investigating of just like looking real quick.
Yeah, but the captain was in charge, right? So I don't think. I think he knew he was about to try to take these two out, right? He like lures them into this ambush here, and
And
they end up.
you know what? You know what just hit me? That's why the captain took charge of the diner massacre.
Yes,
Because remember, Exley was the first one on. He took the
right.
call. He was the first one at the scene, right? So that was his case. But it was also like his first time as a detective, and Captain was like, "No, this is like I'm taking over." And like
That's
it
why.
literally just hit me like that's why he took over because he was like, "Oh, there's probably some shit in here I need to clean up real quick
Yeah, so
before."
he probably would have done the same
Or
thing to the Patchett thing and been like, "I'm taking over. Oh, it's suicide. Great. All right, we're done." But he lures them into this like ambushed here, and they end up wiping out all of his men. And it comes up to um, just Smith and Exley. White's injured at this point too much here, and Smith kind of gives him like this offer of like, if we, the police are already on their way, right? So if we come and tell them we're cops. I'll promote you. Um, whatever. And I love this scene where he's like, "Look, hold up your badge so that way they know you're a cop." And Exley just like blows him away, and then immediately does the "All right, I'm holding up my badge to let them know I'm a cop."
And it went back to that conversation he had earlier. Are you willing to shoot a guy in the back
Right?
who's leaving? So I gotta admit here, there's also another thing I didn't see coming from this scene. I thought White was dead.
Yeah, yeah. I think I would have believed that as well, but they have him survive. He's just, I guess, knocked out at this point.
He
Maybe
passes out. I don't
I
know,
guess Smith
but
thought he
I
was
thought he
dead
was.
too, because that would have been another loose end, right? So I guess Exley goes, checks on him, and he's alive. I would assume. I guess. Um, and then the LAPD, you know, says that in order to protect their image again, they claim that the captain died a hero. Exley is cooperating as the second hero and gets the further accolades, gets another medal, and then that's when he says goodbye to Lynn and Bud as they move off, I guess, to start their own life in Arizona. And that's the end of the movie. We did have a couple end credit scenes too that I have seen for the first time.
So yeah, I don't know what those really added. I guess.
Not much. I think it was just
Um,
like this is before the big trend of post credit scenes, but I I enjoyed the Dragnet esque one where they like put the little in memory of Jack
yeah.
Vincennes and
So let's talk about the credits for a second. So I'll be honest with you, I would not have watched the credits had you not texted me yesterday to say, "Hey, there's a couple other scenes or whatever in the credits." Right? As soon as the credits would have started rolling, I would have hit the back button on my remote,
yep,
and that would have been the end of that. Right? So this came out in 1997, right?
yeah,
I want to say like a minute and a half were the credits. It wasn't long, maybe 2 or 3 minutes tops.
it wasn't
Like it
long.
went
No.
by quick. Um, Now maybe it's just for the kind of movies that like Marvel movies are because you have a lot of the special effects, but the credits on a lot of these movies are so long now.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's a 5 or 10 minute thing for credits, but this one was literally quick. It was like, hey, these are the actors. There's the producer. This is the guy who did Kim Basinger's hair and makeup. These are the guys in the union who did all the grips and stuff.
I think that's why
Um,
I
Thanks to LA for letting us shoot the movie there.
yes.
And that's a wrap. We'll see you next time.
I
And I
think
was like,
that's why I
whoa.
found it because I usually just click the back button, but I was occupied. I had my son in here with me, and like he was doing stuff, so I was like, I'll just let this play and whatever. And I'm like, and then all of a sudden the credits are over and stuff is happening, and I'm like, oh, okay, I didn't know that was a thing. And also the end credit music I thought was really good. I think the music in this movie as a whole is really good.
Yeah, it's fantastic. But like I said, the credits were just like it went by quick, and I was
Yeah,
like I said, whoa! Thanks to LA for helping us make this movie. Special thanks to these people. We'll see you next time. Get out the theater. And I was like, whoa. Would you have liked to have seen a sequel to this and somehow either furthering in LA with Exley or maybe furthering with White and what's her name in Arizona or maybe like a
hmm.
because I think I read there was a series of books where they did like a
Yes.
Chicago Confidential. Would you
Well,
have liked to seen like something like that?
so
Chicago or LA, Dallas, blah blah blah.
the book series is called the L.A. Quartet series. And they have one called The Black Dahlia, The Big Nowhere, L.A. Confidential, and White Jazz. I think is the last one. Um, so I think having like a sequel based on those books without the same actors could have been really intriguing. Just because I like, you know, one of the things they say about these books is that they're really focused more on the characters, and we get a lot of that in this, where like we really spend time with these detectives. Um, that I think find it more interesting than some of the other stuff. But I think I'm out on a sequel. Like if we're just following Exley or um, because I think it would be tough to live up to it in the sense of he brought down like this whole corruption going up to the captain and stuff. He gets promoted. It's like, what else can you really do there? And I'm not sure how interested I am in like an Arizona, like Kim Basinger, Russell Crowe
But
movie.
but I don't think that's the end of the corruption.
Well, no, but I mean,
Um,
like, at some point, like, I find that story more interesting than like whatever I think you could do in a sequel about it, without it feeling like either retreading corruption or just making it like even bigger. Like now the mayor's corrupted, and now we have to, like where you just keep going higher up the ladder. Like that's kind of what happens with sequels sometimes. Is like we got to do what we just did, but like bigger. So the next corruption is the governor or something, and we got to take him down.
it goes all the way up to the top.
Yeah, we're taking down the president. Like Exley is taking down the president. Nixon, 20 years later.
Hoover, Herbert Hoover,
Yeah.
whoever it was during this time.
I don't know. Would you have liked a sequel?
I kind of would have. Like I said, as I've gotten older and learned to appreciate stories and filmmaking more, um, I kind of got more into the noir things. So I would like to have, even if they didn't necessarily do L.A., because like I said, I don't know where I saw some, but I saw there was like a Chicago Confidential,
Wonder if he.
um,
I have to
some other
write who
stuff,
wrote other
maybe.
stuff.
Um, so I maybe just like I said, seeing that in different aspects of it. Like I said, we wouldn't necessarily have to stay in L.A., but obviously there's police corruption in all these places. Um, to see some of those stories, I think would have been really good. Um,
But interestingly enough, there was a couple times they tried to make this a TV show. In 2003, there was a TV pilot made. In 2018, there was a TV pilot. None of them got moved from pilot to actually um, a full
who was
series.
in the most recent one? Does it say who was in it?
Yeah, the most recent one actually had Brian J. Smith as Exley. I don't really know him. Um,
Uh,
Mark Webber as Bud. I don't know him. This is the one that we will know, I think. Walton Goggins as Jack
okay,
Vincennes.
I
Um,
can see him as a Vicens.
yeah. Tony Curran as Captain Dudley Smith. He had. It says he appeared in a couple roles for the MCU. Who did he play?
Who was in the '03 one?
Oh wait, hold on. He was in Secret Invasion. Tony Curran. What did he play in Secret Invasion? Because we covered that. Um. Oh, he was like one of the Skrulls that were in the British secret
Hmm.
agency. Okay.
Who was in the '03 one? Maybe there's more people we would have known from that one.
There's definitely a big name in this one, but we have David Conrad as Ed Exley. He was apparently in Ghost Whisperer with Jennifer Love Hewitt. Josh Hopkins as Bud White. He was apparently in. I know him from his face, but he was in Cougar Town and Ally McBeal.
Okay.
And then this must be the role that they try to give everybody. Big name. Jack Vincennes was Kiefer Sutherland.
I can't see Kiefer Sutherland as Vincennes. I don't know.
I don't know if I could either, but they must be giving that out. Melissa George played Lynn Bracken. She was in some sort of Australian soap opera at some point. Pruitt Taylor Vince. He was in The Mentalist, so there's a connection. He played Sid Hutchins. He's going to play Jonathan Kent in the Superman movie later this year. And Eric Roberts, I know him from seeing him,
Okay.
but
Yeah, I
he
know
was
Eric
Pierce
Roberts.
Patchett.
Oh, I can definitely see him as a
Yeah,
Pierce as Patchett there. Yeah, that without a doubt.
yeah, I can see that. but yeah, I really like James Cromwell, who plays the captain in the movie. I saw him recently also in a Canadian show that was also a Fox TV show. It's called like it stars Kirsten Crook. Murder in a Small Town, I think it's called. He was in the pilot episode of that, and he was really good in that. But um, yeah, apparently the pilot from '03 is on some of the special features on the DVD and Blu-ray. I'll have to see if my Blu-ray has that and maybe watch it
Oh,
and
wow.
see what that's like. But that one did
I could
air. That one did air. It just never got picked up.
I could see honestly, I could see them maybe expanding the story and doing a series, like even if they just did like a limited series with it. Because I mean, this works for 2 hours, right? But you could like I could see them thinking you could expand this to like 8 or 9 or something like that, and delve a little further into some of these stories. They kind of had to gloss over real quick with some of these things,
You
and
could
then
do
maybe spend like
some other cases that are not part of the conspiracy, and you'd have kind of
or
like a
spend like
formula there.
one episode is kind of spent with Exley, going over what he's doing. One episode might be spent with Black, going over what he's doing and how he's coming. Like, I like if they did something like that with the right cast, I don't think that would be that.
No, yeah, I think a TV show could work for it, especially like the book apparently takes over 8 years. I mean, like you could like just have like the final season kind of be like bringing down the captain, and you can have some of these other conspiracies going on and other cases that are going on throughout the show. Um, like maybe you have the Lefferts murder at the end of season one, and Stensland and Lefferts are murdered, and then uh, time passes with it being,
Hell,
completed.
honestly, you depending how many seasons you wanted to do, you could start with like Stenson and
Oh yeah, and start with
uh
them as like a little younger before Exley gets promoted and stuff. And
but start with them as they're starting that corruption and everything, and
yeah,
then that's when who was the guy who's the driver who's the one who was found dead.
Meeks, yeah.
Meeks, like Stenson and Meeks, and then Meeks gets kicked off the force, and now he's doing like private security, but like I could see that becoming like a bigger thing and starting there, and then eventually working your way up to like this overarching story of then you know Exley is maybe a smaller character in the first season or two, and then eventually he becomes Exley we know. But
So this movie was nominated for 9 Academy Awards. It won two, like I mentioned, supporting actress, best adapted screenplay. Titanic won every other category in which L.A. Confidential was nominated for.
what else? What else? Who else got nominations from this? And in all fairness, in the fact that it was the year of Titanic, they're lucky they walked away with two.
Yeah, I haven't seen Titanic, but I hear great things about it. It's one that I've not gotten around to.
Like that's one of those like you got two at that award ceremony. Consider yourself lucky because in all fairness, like
So it
that could have
won.
walked away with every single award and nobody would have complained.
It was nominated for Best Picture. It was nominated for Best
Okay.
Director. It was
Okay.
nominated for Best Art Direction. It was nominated for Best Cinematography.
Wow.
It was nominated for Best Film Editing. It was nominated for Best Dramatic Score, and it was nominated for Best Sound.
So one
None
thing
of
I
the other
did
actors.
I did see in this as well was they didn't want to use the harsh light that you see in a lot of like film noir stuff. So they wanted, and obviously it was nominated for like best. You said set dressing or set direction or whatever. Um, so that like they wanted that aesthetic, but they just didn't want the harsh lights and everything that you see in a lot of. So that's why they kind of gave it a modern lighting aspect, which I think worked out pretty well.
All right, let's move over to Rotten Tomatoes. 99% LA Confidential has. That's 165 reviews. I know sometimes with these older movies, um, there's not as much reviews. 165 is still a pretty
Well,
decent
you know what?
chunk of
For
reviews.
that
So
one, that could possibly,
nice.
because it was nominated for so many Academy Awards too. So something like that is probably going to get
True.
a lot more reviews, especially as award season goes, as compared to if it wasn't nominated for anything. You probably wouldn't have a ton. But once award season hits and that's a movie that keeps popping up, then you got all those people who are going to give their take on what they thought of L.A. Confidential and so on and so forth. So
And it was like a 90 six 94 on the popcorn meter, 8.2 out of 10 on IMDb with a 91 meta score on
all
Metacritic.
right, so
So
while we're talking about
uh
review scores, maybe you can explain this to me. What's the deal with the cinema score?
mhm.
Where like anything less than like an A is not considered a good movie. How is that? Like C's get
So
degrees.
it
Like
all
I
depends
could
on
see if you got like a C or below, but like
genre too. So the way that you want to look at it is if you're looking at like a Marvel film, right? Cinema Score will do these scores on typically like the Thursday and Friday night, that first weekend that they're doing the scores. And when you're looking at like a Marvel score, you're looking at the people that are going that Thursday and Friday are the hardcore
okay,
of the fans, right? So when you look at something like a Marvel score, if it has anything less than an A minus, it's not quote unquote good. It's going to affect the legs of the film because if the hardcorest of the fans are giving it a B, it's going to affect how the general turnout is going to be. When you look at things like horror films, if they get a B, it is seen as a really big deal because a lot of horror films, cinema score will get something like more like a C or a D. So if like it all depends on the genre, and that I wouldn't really worry too much about cinema score when it comes to, I would say, like critical reception. It's more used for like the way I use cinema score is look more at like the legs. How well is it going to perform going forward in theaters based on the reception it's getting from the general fans. And yeah, it seems weird when you can say like, oh, it only has a B plus. That is like the worst thing ever. Like what I think Captain America, the newest one, got a B minus, and that's the lowest ever cinema score for a Marvel film. And it makes people question stuff because that is not the worst Marvel film, right? It is like I think there are definitely worse MCU films, but it just happens to kind of coincide, but with more on how it performs going forward after that. Like I don't know. I don't really understand how they get to the grades, but like depending on the genre, like a family movie usually ends up in the A range anyway because kids and the families that are going to see it are a little bit more lenient on it. Like I said, horror will usually score pretty low actually, because it's all about expectations, what people expected going in, and if that matches or doesn't match those expectations when people come out and start giving their cinema score. And it's like people that go and like I don't know, I think they do it in like a lot of the big cities. I'm not sure if they're where else the people that do a cinema score go, but they're usually catching a lot of people as soon as they
I just
exit.
like I said, it just to me the whole thing just doesn't make sense. Where it's like, oh, it got it like you said, it got a B, so that's all of a sudden, yeah, like it's like, wait a minute,
Terrible,
this
yeah.
a B is not bad. Like, has there ever been anything that got like a D or an F or said, well, I'm sure there has, but
Oh yeah. Let's see. What is the lowest ever cinema score? Um, recorded is a D plus, which was given to Megalopolis by
wow.
Francis Ford Coppola. That's
I
recent.
mean, I heard that wasn't a good movie, but like,
Oh, and Joker 2 earned a D,
That's another one
which
that
is got to be the lowest as well. So,
I haven't really heard any good things about at all. So
yeah, crazy. Okay, I'll give my rating and then I'll push it on to you here. I probably first saw this movie 15 years ago, close around then, and I gave it 5 stars then. I'm going to give it 5 stars now. I really dig this movie. It's making me want to play LA Noir again, which is, like you said, criminally underrated. I can't believe there's been no sequel to LA Noir. Um, or and even any other games that have kind of based themselves around just like top games like that of detective games of solving stuff that way. Like usually it's more point and click stuff, but having like one like that was open world and you could actually study the clues and stuff I thought was really inventive. And I think this movie and the book it's based off of played a big role in inspiring that. So um, I think without the twist at the end of the captain being in on this conspiracy, it'd probably be lower for me. But I think once we get to the Christmas massacre and stuff, the story really picks up and just starts really going.
okay, so for me, like I said, it's my first time watching it. Uh, I I've had an interest in noir films for a while. I just never really got around to it. Like I said, I want to pick up like the Maltese Falcon and Strangers on a Train. Some of these, classic ones, and um, I've got like an Alfred Hitchcock collection, so there's some in there that I definitely need to watch. Yeah,
Rear Window,
yeah, stuff like that.
that's a good one.
Um,
Have you watched that one or
no,
no?
but I have. I think I have Rear Window. I have Disturbia, which is based off of Rear Window. Um, if
Yeah.
we can find it,
Well, I love Rear Window. I think I
well,
might pick
there's
that next season then
so
if I
okay.
can find it. Stream.
We're talking about that for next season. I was looking at a movie called Fright Night for next season, a horror movie that came out in the '80s. I was actually looking at doing because they did a remake a couple years ago, about 10 years ago. So I was gonna do a 2-pack where we watched the original and then the remake. And the original, based in the '80s,
Mm,
is based off a guy who is in his he's a teenager in high school, but he believes a vampire is moving next door to him, and he's watching this through his bedroom window. So it's kind of got like a Rear Window type vibe to it. You know what I'm saying? Because everything he sees, he's seeing through the window, but nobody
yeah.
believes him, right? But yeah, like Rear Window, I definitely want. I think I have that. I want to check that out because I have a Hitchcock collection DVD, but I just haven't watched all. Honestly, I haven't put it in to watch any of them. I'm one of those weird dudes who has a bunch of movies I haven't watched yet, as you know. But anyway, um, and this definitely piqued my interest more and maybe made me realize I definitely should kind of get back into those and watch more. And I probably should have watched them as a kid, but I was just young and stupid. Thought, what do I want to watch an old movie for? I could give this a 4, 4.5. It was definitely a good movie. It's definitely something I probably should have checked out sooner. And I don't know why I haven't.
Alrighty. Let's go to stats. I got some stats here. Uh, this is an adaptation. So this is our 12th adaptation. When it comes to films, we have three adaptations of TV shows. Buffy is based off a movie. The Office was based off the UK show. The X Files uh, is not an adaptation. Never mind. So two adaptations of TV shows. I think I just started adding TV shows that we have on here. Okay. Um, but we have 12 films. L.A. Confidential based off a book. Now, is this a franchise? I put a
I
question
don't.
mark here. This would be our 20th if so, because it has two
I'd
pilots
say
that were
no
made
because
out of it,
nothing ever
but
came of it.
I don't know.
Like,
Okay, I'll agree with that because it doesn't feel
if
right
we'd have
calling
got
this a
maybe a
franchise.
season, if they would have, if even if one of those would have spawned a season,
Yeah, yeah, because that's what I
I
did
would
for
have
Ferris
said that
Bueller.
that's a
I admit.
franchise. But I'd say no. Now, depending what happens with Ferris Bueller, that could turn into a franchise because are they still doing that silly one where they wanted to do that show where they wanted to do what happened with the two who
I
took
don't know.
the Corvette off when they parked it? Are they still talking about that those two parking attendants, even though it's like 50 years later?
I don't know. And I did count it as a franchise because we already had a
Okay,
Ferris Bueller
so it did.
TV show that
Yeah,
did last a
so it
season.
did.
So I think you're right that that's probably the because there was like an old one that Jennifer Aniston was in, but I haven't seen any update on that like
I
TV
just know I
sequel
heard
that
it
they
was
were trying
last
to
year, the year
do.
before, something like that. They were talking about.
Oh yeah,
I
still
don't know.
going. I thought they
I
said it was
heard
still
about
going.
it
Let me
real
see.
quick, and they were talking
Ferris
about, oh, we're
Bueller.
developing the story of the adventure these two guys went on when they took, what was it, Cameron's Corvette or whatever, and it was,
Yeah, the Mustang or whatever.
but I haven't heard anything about it since,
Let's
so I
see.
don't know. Like, I don't know if that's even continuing, or did they just realize that might not be a good idea? Like,
Yeah, there's some things that lend themselves to
an adult get
stuff, and
an
I think there's
an adult gets in the room and
franchises
is
and
like,
ones that
"Is
don't.
this really what we're gonna do? Are we really gonna try and do this? Really?" Nothing against those actors who would get that job, but these two guys, we're gonna make a series based off of these two guys. Kind of like someone should have been the adult in the room when they decided to make the Caveman series after the Geico ads. Like, really?
That was a good show though. That Caveman, I will stick up for that. That was a good show. It was like it took a concept that could be really dumb, and I think it was a pretty smart show
I
actually.
never watched it. I heard it didn't get great
I was
reviews.
a fan.
I don't even know if it lasted the full season, but like, I'll tell you, if you enjoyed it, cool. I just that was one of those that was one of those where it's like,
Yeah, good
do we
show.
really need this?
So this show, it was actually gonna. They said it's a spin-off film called Sam and Victor's Day Off for Paramount Plus, and it was announced in 2022, and I don't see any update on it. So I'm gonna say it's most likely DOA,
I can, like I said, that's one of
but
those where there needs to be
who
an adult
knows?
in the room. Like, do we really need to do this, guys? But
Well, okay, hold on. 2024, it got a director. That was last year, February. So maybe it's still happening. I don't know what would be taking it this long to get off the ground though. If you have a director and it's been 3 years since announcing it.
well, I mean, do they even have a script? I mean, like they had the idea, but I mean, is there like was there a script, or was it just a
I
what
would
was it
hope that
just a
after
treatment?
3 years of announcing it, you have some
But
script.
has the script been rewritten like two
Yeah,
or three
yeah, I know.
times, like a lot of shows or stuff like that might happen? Okay, you know what? And now that I think about it, if it's
Uh,
if it's a movie and they just show like in 2 hours what these guys might have went up to, that maybe I guess can have some appeal and charm. I thought it was a show at one point. That's why I was like, really, we're making a whole show out of this. But considering all that takes in the course of a day, and they had the car for a couple hours, like I can see maybe something like that.
yeah. I don't know. We have. I added Curtis Hanson to the film. I think he directed a few other things that I haven't seen that maybe potentially would end up becoming a pick. So I wrote it down. I mean, he directed
Oh wow,
8 Mile. Haven't
it
seen
was
it.
okay.
Don't know if you like it, but there you go. Haven't seen that. Those are. Let's see. What other movies did he do? He's been around since '72. None of them are like super big movies, other than this, really. So, In Her Shoes, which was the a Cameron Diaz, Tony Collette, Shirley MacLaine movie, rom com, I guess. That's all I really see. Um, he let's see. So I added him to the list of directors with one film. He joins Quentin Tarantino, Martin Campbell, Michael Bay, Mark Forster, Seth Gordon, James Wong as directors that we've had one film with. Top actors. We got a couple updates here. We have uh we have let me scroll down. This is a long list now. Russell Crowe with two films, Gladiator and L.A. Confidential, so he adds one here. And we have Kevin Spacey now with two films, After Horrible Bosses and L.A. Confidential. And of course, we have DeVito, Simon Baker, Kim Basinger, Guy Pearce, all with one film, L.A. Confidential. And I have genres now. I included this as crime thriller, which is our second one of those. Pulp Fiction is also listed as crime
Yeah,
thriller on Letterboxd, so
I can see that.
I
Yeah,
put that
I'd
in the
agree with
same
that.
thing. Our biggest one right now is action and fantasy sci-fi. A lot of crossover there.
Terminator series,
Like Terminator franchise is also listed in action, but I also have it listed in
Lord of the
sci-fi and
Rings.
fantasy. So, um, Lord of the Rings, Interstellar is sci-fi. We have Ghostbusters, Rogue One, The Suicide Squad, Spider Verse. You know, all of those great things are in fantasy, sci-fi, comedy. Also, we have a good chunk in as well. But yeah, so that last and the last thing we usually do is main characters by first names letter. Right? We have a couple additions here. We have Edmund Exley for E. It's only our fourth E. We have uh, Jack Hollywood Vincennes on LA Confidential. That's like our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, eighth J. We have our third L, Lynn Bracken. And we had Wendell White, which is only our second W after Weird Al from the Weird the Al Yankovic story. All right, what are we watching next?
Yeah, I
It's your
waited till
wild
the end of the
card, right?
season to use it because I was thinking you might have picked the movie at some point, so I didn't want to. I didn't want to. Okay, so basically, I didn't want to jump it and pick it before you could have picked it, and I've also been holding off for the last year or so on picking this movie, and I'm pretty sure you have an idea. What would you guess my wild card is going to
I'm guessing it's
be? You,
across the
sir, are
Spider Verse.
correct.
That's been my guess. All right. So I haven't been picking it because I figured that was going to be your wild card. So like
Yeah,
we've
like
been dodging each
I
other on this.
enjoyed the first one a lot, so I decided, okay, you know what? And I know at some point you said last season, like, oh, well, I'll probably pick the sequel next when we do season 2. So that's why I was like, okay, cool. Like if he's
Yeah.
going to pick that, like, because I could have I almost wanted to watch it immediately after the first one, but then I was like, no, like he might pick this,
Mm-hmm.
so didn't want to do that. And then when we jumped the wild card in there, I still didn't want to pick it because I thought it was something that you at some point would have picked, and then I would have just had to figure out my wild card thing. But yeah, I definitely want to see. Was it 26 or 27? Is when the third one? I think they just announced a date for the third one.
Yes, 2027. Now this is a topic we'll probably broach next episode then, but this third movie was originally they were originally Across the Spider-Verse Part 1 and Across the Spider-Verse Part 2, and they were supposed to release in June of 2023, was it? Right? And then uh March 2024, I think it was. So it was supposed to be like a 9 month gap between the movies. That did not happen. So we are now at going to be a 4-year gap in between movies with 2027 wrapping up the wrapping up the trilogy. Yeah, so that's on
I also own it.
Netflix.
I
That
also own the
is
disc. I think I
currently
got it
available.
after, because yeah, I think I
We
got it
watched
after
the
we watched
first
the
one. I
first
think
one because
so.
I was like,
Yeah.
well, I like the first one. I'm pretty sure I'm gonna like this one too. Um,
And look, a lot of people, this is for a lot of people, this is one of the best animated films of all time. People have this as above Into the Spider Verse. I personally don't. We'll get more into those reasons, I think, next week. Still very good movie for me. But it's one of those that um a lot of people really hyped up the second one. So it'll be interesting to get your thoughts as somebody that really dug
yeah,
the
and
first one. So
honestly, now once the next one comes out in 2027 or whenever it comes out, because there's always delays and various other things. Especially we're dealing with
yeah.
animation, and who knows what's gonna happen with all that down the road. But I this is I I'm feeling, especially something like that. I'm feeling a little better about going to see that movie by myself. I think we've talked about this before about just being a single guy going to see some animated movies by yourself can give some weird vibes off at times. Understandably so for people who are bringing their families into something like that. Um, it's one thing if like, let's say we actually lived in the same town, like me, you, and a couple other guys went to go see it. That's one thing. It's another thing when there's just some
Right, right.
random dude by himself in an animated or kids movie, right? Like that can give off some weird vibes, and I understand why some families would be weirded out by that. Because I would be weirded out by that. Like, why is that dude up there in the back of the theater by himself? And I don't want to do that to anybody, right? I don't want to weird any families out. I want to let everybody enjoy the movie. So, but I think something
Right.
like that, I think either A is a well enough known property is not necessarily a totally a children's movie, right? As compared to like if it was like I think when Peanuts came out a couple years
Mhm.
ago, I definitely don't think I could have went to go see that, or some of these other ones. Or I may just go see it like on my day off at like a matinee at like 12 o'clock in the afternoon or something, like
Yeah, I mean, this is a. I would say I see lots of people by themselves in this. When we go to see this, it's not like especially with it being a superhero movie that's, I would say so well rounded and not. It's not like you're going to see. I don't know. Sometimes rated like G for general audiences, or like that's aimed at children. This is really aimed
yeah.
at, I would say, anybody, and just animation is the
And
medium.
I think because it is
Um,
Spider-Man and it's
so
connected to
really looking
Marvel and
forward
stuff,
to it.
like that's a whole separate thing. Like
Yeah,
as compared to if it was like I don't even know what kids are into these days. But like if I went to go see like, well, no, because
Minecraft.
there are people who are adults now who are into Minecraft. That's not my thing. Yeah, that's not my
Yeah,
thing.
played it when they were
And
a kid
especially
or
where I'm
whatever.
hearing
Yeah.
like people were yelling catchphrases and stuff in the theater. Like I definitely don't know if I would have been up for that. That might have ruined the movie for me, but that's also not my kind of movie, and I can understand. Isn't there something called like a Blues Clues movie or something like that, right? Like or what is that? I think there's something
Right,
called
right.
Bluey about a blue dog. I don't know. I don't have kids. I don't know what kids are into nowadays, right? But something like that. Paw Patrol. There we go. I know kids are into Paw Patrol. If you saw me in the back of a Paw Patrol
Yeah, yeah,
movie,
yeah.
like I think there's a bunch of people who might be like, "What is going on?" So
Right, right. Alrighty. Well, we will do that
yes,
Across the Spider Verse on Netflix for the next episode, and then I'll have my last pick, which is I'm gonna give a little hint. I already told you, but I'm going to give a little hint to the listeners that somebody that featured prominently in this movie, L.A. Confidential, is going to be in that
really?
next pick. Yeah, do
No.
you not know?
I, I know what
I'll talk to
what
you
you said it
offline.
was going to be, but I don't know who's
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting that you don't know this. Okay, so yeah, so if you're listening, there's a clue. but we'll be adding another appearance to them on the stat sheet as well. But yeah, looking forward to that. So follow us on all of our social medias. You can give us your thoughts on LA Confidential or Across the Spider-Verse as we head into that movie. And as we get closer to wrapping up season 2, take a short break, reload, come up with maybe a couple more rules or different wild cards, and then we'll get into it. But thank you all for watching and listening, and we'll catch you next time.